The rain started 3 hours ago, and it hasn't stopped. Not once. Not even for a breath. I'm Private Kexnall of the 3rd Galactic Cadet Battalion. And right now, I'm standing knee-deep in what used to be our training ground, watching the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen in my 17 cycles of existence. There's a human, one single solitary human, dragging massive logs through the rising water like they weigh nothing. Meanwhile, my fellow cadets are screaming their mandibles off. "This is madness," squeaks Cadet Vortmex, his 6 legs splashing frantically as he tries to climb higher on what remains of our supply platform. We are all going to drown. The water's rising too fast. Let me paint you a picture here. We are on training Moon Ketos-7, a lovely little rock specifically chosen for its challenging weather patterns and character-building environmental hazards. Translation: the instructors dumped us here because the storms are legendary, the terrain is hostile, and apparently watching young aliens panic builds character. The human? Staff Sergeant Jack Morrison, built like a cargo hauler, talks like a mechanic, and for some reason finds our current predicament absolutely hilarious. "Hey, fish face," Morrison shouts over the thunder, addressing Cadet Bliprex, who's clinging to a tree branch like his life depends on it. Which, frankly, it does. You gonna hang there all day, or you gonna help me with these logs? Bliprex's gills flutter in terror. "I cannot swim in this torrent. My respiratory system will collapse." Morrison just grins. Actually grins. Like we're not all about to become fish food in the galaxy's worst swimming pool. Nobody's asking you to swim. Genius. I'm building us a way out. Building us a way out. Right? With what? Sticks and hope? But here's the thing about humans that nobody tells you in the academy briefings. They don't panic. Ever. When every rational species in the galaxy would be calculating escape trajectories and composing final messages to their spawn parents, humans just start building things. The water's up to my thorax now, and I can feel the current trying to drag me downstream toward the canyon that definitely wasn't there this morning. The storm carved it out in under 2 hours. 2 hours. That's some seriously aggressive erosion. "Morrison!" I shout, my voice cracking like a molting teenager's. The geological surveys said this was a stable training zone. He looks up from where he's somehow managed to tie 3 massive logs together with what appears to be vine fiber he tore from the surrounding jungle with his bare hands. His bare hands. No tools, no equipment, just raw human stubbornness and an apparent immunity to common sense. Surveys were wrong. He calls back, matter of fact, as discussing the weather. Happens sometimes. You adapt. You adapt. Like it's that simple. Cadet Nimtol, bless her 3 hearts, tries to help by fluttering her wings to create a small wind current that might push debris away from Morrison's construction project. The effort is admirable but utterly pointless against the storm. Her wing membranes are already tearing from the strain. "Save your energy, Nim," Morrison tells her, not even pausing in his work. "You're going to need it for later." Later? What later? We are about to be washed into whatever geological nightmare this storm is carving downstream. But Morrison keeps working. Log after log, vine after vine, creating what I can only describe as the most primitive watercraft I have ever seen. It looks like something our cave-dwelling ancestors might have built before we discovered anti-gravity. It's crude, bulky, and held together with plant matter, but it's also our only chance. "How do you know this will work?" demands Cadet Grick's soul, his multiple eyes blinking in different patterns, a sure sign of panic in a species. Morrison pauses, water up to his waist, and looks at us with something that might be pity or amusement. With humans, it's hard to tell. "I don't," he says simply, "but I know sitting here crying about it definitely won't work." Crying about it. The human just accused trained Galactic Defense cadets of crying. The audacity is breathtaking. But then Cadet Zim Kaur proves Morrison's point by literally bursting into tears. High-pitched wailing that cuts through even the thunder. His emotional regulation implants must be malfunctioning from water damage. "We are going to die on this miserable rock." Zim Kaur Shopsh. I never even got to see the Spiral Nebula races. I never told Recruit Pipnet that I found her attractive. My life is incomplete. Your life's going to be real incomplete if you don't grab that end of the log and help me secure it. Morrison replies dryly. Move it, recruit. Time's wasting. The water's rising faster now. What started as a gentle rain has become a deluge that would make the storm gods of ancient mythology weep with envy. I can feel the ground shifting beneath my feet as the current strengthens. Morrison's raft, and let's be generous and call it that. It started to look like something that might actually float. He's created a basic platform about 12 feet long and 8 feet wide, with raised edges made from smaller branches woven together. It's not pretty, but it's functional. All right, listen up, Morrison shouts, hauling himself onto the contraption with the ease of someone who does this sort of thing regularly. This bucket's gonna hold us, but barely. Weight distribution is critical. Heaviest passengers center, lightest at the edges. No sudden movements, no panic, and for the love of all that's holy, no jumping around like caffeinated lemurs. Caffeinated lemurs. I don't even know what those are, but somehow the comparison feels accurate. Cadet Rixmar, whose species evolved from aquatic hunters, eyes the raft suspiciously. This construction appears structurally unsound. The binding mechanisms are primitive at best. Morrison's expression shifts to what humans call a smirk. It's deeply unsettling. You are welcome to swim if you think you could do better, fish boy. But I should mention the current's running about 15 knots now, and there's a lovely waterfall about 3 miles downstream. Should be fun. Rixmar's gills snap shut in alarm. Even aquatic species have their limits, apparently. The water reaches my chest plates, and panic starts creeping up my spine like an ice-cold parasite. This is really happening. We are really about to trust our lives to this primitive human construction project. Everybody on, Morrison commands, and for once, nobody argues. We scramble onto the raft like it's the last transport off a doomed planet, which, considering our circumstances, isn't far from the truth. The moment the last cadet climbs aboard, the raft lurches sickeningly. Several of us grab for each other, mandibles clicking, tentacles flailing, wings folding tight against bodies. It's not dignified, but dignity is a luxury we can't afford right now. Morrison, naturally, looks completely at ease. He's positioned himself at what I suppose is the front of our makeshift vessel, holding a long branch he's somehow fashioned into a steering pole. Because of course he has. Welcome aboard the good ship. Oh shit, he announces cheerfully. Next stop, anywhere but here. The current catches us immediately. One moment we are stationary, the next we are spinning downstream like a leaf in a hurricane. The raft groans and flexes but holds together. Barely. This is insane. Vortmex shrieks, his compound eyes reflecting pure terror in every facet. We are going to die horribly. Probably. Morrison agrees conversationally, using his pole to push us away from a particularly nasty-looking boulder. But we're going to make it interesting. Make it interesting. The human thinks our imminent doom is going to be interesting. The storm shows no signs of letting up. If anything, it's getting worse. Lightning splits the sky in patterns that hurt to look at, and the thunder is so loud it makes my exoskeleton vibrate. The rain hammers down like liquid bullets, turning our already precarious situation into something approaching nightmare territory. But Morrison? Morrison is humming. Actually humming some human tune while he navigates us through what can only be described as nature's attempt at genocide. What is that sound you are making? Nimtol asks, her voice barely audible over the storm. Old Earth song. Morrison explains, angling us around a cluster of debris. Called row, row, row your boat. Seemed appropriate. Row your boat. Like this disaster qualifies as boating. The canyon walls are rushing past us now, carved fresh from the bedrock by the storm's fury. I can see layers of geological history exposed in the stone, evidence of millions of years of gradual formation torn open in hours. It's beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. How long until we reach the waterfall? Cadet Bliprex asks, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Morrison glances downstream, calculating with the kind of casual competence that suggests he's done this before. Multiple times. 20 minutes, give or take. Depends on how fast this current gets. 20 minutes. 20 minutes until we plunge over a waterfall of unknown height into unknown depths in a raft held together with hope and plant fiber. Can we survive that? I ask, not sure I want to know the answer, that Morrison's grin is answer enough. It's the kind of smile that suggests survival is entirely optional, but the ride's going to be memorable regardless. Depends on what you mean by survive, he says. Technically speaking, we just need to hit the water right and avoid the rocks. Avoid the rocks, right? Simple. The raft spins again as we hit a particularly violent eddy, and for a moment I'm sure we're going to capsize. Water sloshes over the edges, soaking us further, as if that were possible, and the bindings creak ominously. But we stay afloat. Somehow, impossibly, we stay afloat. Morrison, I say, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. I have to ask, have you done this before? He looks back at me, rain streaming down his face, and his expression is almost fond. Kid, he says, you have no idea what humans consider normal Tuesday activities. Normal Tuesday activities. Building rafts in death storms is a normal Tuesday for humans. What kind of species are we allied with? The sound hits us first. A low, rumbling roar that starts in your bones and works its way up through your entire nervous system until your teeth ache from the vibration. It's the kind of sound that primitive brains recognize instantly as danger, the kind that sends every survival instinct into overdrive, the waterfall. Well, Morrison says conversationally, raising his voice over the approaching thunder, this is going to be fun. Fun! The human thinks plummeting over a cliff into churning death water is going to be fun. I could see it now, maybe 300 meters ahead. The river just ends, drops into nothing but mist and spray and the promise of very sudden stops at the bottom. The canyon walls narrow here, channeling all that rushing water into a concentrated torrent of liquid fury. How high do you think it is? Cadet Nimtol asks, her wings tucked tight against her body in the universal posture of impending doom. Morrison squints through the rain, calculating with that same casual competence that's kept us alive this long. Hard to say from here. Maybe 60, 70 feet. Could be more. 70 feet. 70 feet of free fall in a makeshift raft held together with plant matter and stubborn human optimism. That will kill us, states Cadet Rixmar flatly. His aquatic heritage might help him survive the impact, but the rest of us? We are looking at a very wet, very final lesson in applied physics. Not necessarily, Morrison replies, angling the raft toward what appears to be the center of the flow. Water's deep down there. Has to be with all this runoff. The trick is hitting it right. Hitting it right. Like there's a right way to plummet over a waterfall. What does hitting it right mean exactly? I ask, proud that my voice only cracks a little, that Morrison's grin is absolutely manic now. Feet first, straight down, don't fight the current when you hit. Oh, and try not to land on each other. That tends to end badly. Try not to land on each other. Noted. The current's really grabbing us now, pulling us inexorably toward that terrifying edge. The raft spins slowly as we race downstream, giving us a rotating view of our approaching doom. On one side, sheer canyon walls carved fresh by the storm. On the other, more sheer canyon walls. Ahead, certain death. Behind us, the path we can no longer take. That it's actually kind of poetic in a horrible way. I want everyone to know, Cadet Zimkor announces solemnly, that if I die here, I blame the human. Fair enough, Morrison says agreeably. But you're not going to die. Probably. Such confidence. How can you be so calm? Vortmex demands, his 6 legs scrabbling for purchase on the wet logs. We are about to be destroyed. Morrison looks back at us, and for a moment, his expression is almost serious. Almost. Because panic kills, he says simply. Fear makes you stupid, and stupid gets you dead. Right now, we need to be smart. Smart, right? Smart would have been staying on the transport and never coming to this nightmare moon in the first place. The edge is getting closer. I can see where the water just disappears, like someone drew a line across reality and erased everything beyond it. The spray is catching us now, fine droplets that sting like tiny bullets driven by the wind. 30 seconds. Morrison shouts, "Remember what I said. Feet first, straight down, don't fight it. 30 seconds. 30 seconds to live." But then something remarkable happens. Instead of dissolving in a panic like any reasonable collection of sentient beings would, we actually start preparing. Nimtol folds her wings properly for impact. Rixmar positions himself for a diving entry. Even Zimkor stops wailing long enough to brace himself. It's like Morrison's calm is contagious. Somehow, his absolute refusal to accept defeat is spreading to the rest of us. 10 seconds. Morrison calls. "Remember, this is just another training exercise." Training exercise. Sure, the kind where failure results in very permanent consequences. The raft tips forward as we reach the edge, and suddenly we are not riding on water anymore. We are flying, falling. The world drops away beneath us, and for one impossible moment, we are suspended in space with nothing but spray and mist and a distant promise of solid ground far, far below. Time does something strange here. Everything slows down and speeds up simultaneously. I can see individual raindrops hanging in the air around us, each one perfectly formed and crystal clear. I can count the beats of Nimtol's frantically fluttering wings. I can hear Vortmex screaming in harmony with the wind. And through it all, Morrison is laughing. Actually laughing as we plummet toward our doom. The water rushes up to meet us with all the warmth and welcome of a meteor impact. I remember Morrison's instructions. Feet first, straight down, and somehow manage to position myself properly just before everything goes white and cold and impossibly violent. The impact drives every molecule of air from my respiratory chambers. It's like being hit by a planet. The water doesn't part for us. We have to force our way through it, breaking its surface tension through sheer momentum and the universe's apparent sense of humor. Down, down, down we go, into depths that shouldn't exist on a training moon. The pressure builds in my auditory organs until I'm sure they're going to rupture. The cold seeps through my exoskeleton like liquid nitrogen, but I'm alive. Somehow, impossibly, I'm alive that I kick toward what I hope is the surface, my lungs burning for air. Around me, I can see the other cadets doing the same, dark shapes struggling upward through the churning water. Even Zimkor, who I was sure would panic and drown, is swimming with determined strokes toward the light. Breaking the surface is like being reborn. Air rushes into my lungs with the sweetness of salvation, and I can finally see what we have landed in. It's a pool. A deep, natural pool carved out by countless years of falling water, surrounded by smooth stone walls and fed by the thundering cascade above us. It's actually beautiful in a way that makes you appreciate being alive to see it. Sound off. Morrison's voice cuts through the noise of the waterfall. Everyone accounted for. One by one, we call out. Nimtol, her wings waterlogged but intact. Rixmar, looking perfectly at home in the deep water. Vortmex, all 6 limbs working overtime to keep him afloat. Even Zimkor, who stopped crying long enough to realize he's not dead, that we are all here. We are all alive. Against every law of probability and common sense, we survived. Well, Morrison says, treading water with the casual ease of someone who probably learned to swim before he could walk. That was invigorating. Invigorating. The human describes our near-death experience as invigorating. How? I gasp, still trying to process the fact that we are not scattered across the rocks like organic confetti. How did you know the water would be deep enough? Morrison's grin is visible even through the spray and mist. I didn't, but it was either jump and find out or sit on that raft and discuss our feelings until we went over anyway. Seemed like an easy choice. An easy choice. Between certain death and probable death. The human chose probable death and somehow made it work. The raft. Nimtol suddenly exclaims, "What happened to your construction?" We all look around, and sure enough, there's no sign of Morrison's masterpiece. Just scattered logs floating here and there. The vines that held it together finally giving up their stubborn grip on structural integrity. Served its purpose, Morrison says philosophically. Got us here in one piece. Can't ask for more than that. Got us here. Here, where we are stranded at the bottom of a canyon with sheer walls and no apparent way out. I'm starting to see a pattern in Morrison's problem-solving methodology. So, Cadet Grixol asks, his multiple eyes blinking in different patterns of concern, how exactly do we get out of here? Morrison looks around the canyon walls, studying them with the same casual assessment he used for the raft construction. The walls are smooth stone, carved by water over geological timescales. They rise maybe 200 feet to the canyon rim, with very few handholds and no obvious climbing routes to any rational being. It would look impossible. Well, Morrison says cheerfully, I guess we climb. Climb. Of course we climb. Because apparently humans think vertical rock faces are just another minor inconvenience. But here's the thing about Morrison's confidence. It's earned. Over the next hour, he somehow identifies a route up the canyon wall that none of us would have spotted. A series of tiny ledges, barely visible cracks, and what can only be described as hope-based handholds that form a precarious path to freedom. And he doesn't just find the route. He helps each of us up it, one at a time, offering encouragement and actual physical assistance when needed. Nimtol's wings prove useful for short, gliding hops between ledges. Rixmar's adhesive digits give him better grip than the rest of us. Even Zim Core manages the climb, though he does most of it with his eyes closed. I'm the last one up, and by the time Morrison hauls me over the rim, the storm has finally started to break. Actual sunlight is poking through the clouds for the first time in hours, turning the soaked landscape into something almost beautiful. We collapse on solid ground, exhausted but alive. The training base is visible in the distance, maybe a 2-hour walk across relatively flat terrain. After what we have been through, it might as well be a pleasure stroll. Morrison, I say when I finally catch my breath, I have to ask, is this normal for humans? Building things out of nothing, surviving impossible situations, turning disasters into minor inconveniences. Morrison considers this seriously, which somehow makes his eventual answer even more unsettling. Pretty much, he says, we're not the strongest species or the smartest or the fastest, but we are too stubborn to know when we are beaten. And sometimes that's enough. Too stubborn to know when they are beaten. That might be the most accurate description of humanity I have ever heard. As we start the walk back to base, I find myself thinking about the reports I will have to file. How do you explain that your entire squad survived a flash flood, waterfall plunge, and canyon escape because one human refused to accept that the situation was hopeless? How do you quantify that kind of determination in an official document? You don't. You just mark it down as another day working with humans and try to prepare yourself for whatever impossible thing they will do next, because there will be a next time. There always is with humans, and somehow that thought doesn't scare me as much as it should. Maybe I'm learning something from Morrison after all. Maybe we all are. The stubborn refusal to give up might just be contagious. And in a galaxy full of species that know when they're outmatched, that might be exactly what we need. The walk back to base takes longer than expected, mostly because every few hundred meters someone spots another impossible thing Morrison has done and we have to stop to discuss it. Like the fact that he somehow knew exactly which vines would hold our weight and which ones would snap. Or how he calculated the water depth at the bottom of a waterfall he'd never seen before. It's called experience. Morrison explains when Cadet Bliprex asks him directly. You do something enough times, you start to recognize patterns. Patterns, right? Because apparently falling off waterfalls is something humans do regularly enough to develop pattern recognition. How many times have you fallen off waterfalls? Nimtol asks, her curiosity finally overcoming her exhaustion. Morrison thinks about this seriously, which is somehow more disturbing than if he'd answered immediately. Counting today? Maybe 15, 16 times. Lost count after that rescue operation on Kepler, 442b. That planet had waterfalls everywhere. 15 times. The human has survived falling off waterfalls 15 times. This is apparently just Tuesday for his species. What rescue operation? I ask because clearly I hate myself and want to hear more impossible human stories. Morrison's expression shifts slightly, becoming more serious. Not grim, Exactly, but focused in a way that suggests we are about to hear something significant. Mining colony got cut off by seasonal flooding. 43 people trapped on a plateau. No way down except through about 6 miles of rapids and falls. Command said it was impossible, told us to wait for the water to recede. But you didn't wait, Vortmek says. It's not really a question. Couldn't wait. They had maybe 3 days of supplies left, and the flood season on that planet lasts 2 months. So we went in anyway. Of course they did. Because humans apparently consider impossible to be more of a suggestion than an actual limitation. How many of you? Cadet Rixmar asks. Just me and Corporal Martinez. 2 humans against 6 miles of death water. Morrison shrugs like this is completely reasonable. We built 17 rafts that trip, lost 16 of them, but we got all 43 colonists out alive. 17 rafts. They built 17 rafts and lost 16 of them, and Morrison describes this like it's a minor detail. What happened to Corporal Martinez? Zimcor asks quietly that Morrison's grin returns, genuine and warm. Promoted to Sergeant Martinez. Last I heard, she was teaching water survival to Marine recruits on Luna Base, probably terrifying the hell out of them with stories about proper raft construction. The mental image of a human teaching other humans how to build raft from scratch while water falls thunder around them is both inspiring and deeply troubling. What kind of species needs that as part of their basic military training? We crest a small hill, and the training base comes into view properly for the first time. It looks exactly like what it is. A collection of prefabricated structures designed to house young military personnel while they learn to kill things efficiently. Right now, it looks like paradise, but there's something wrong with the picture. Smoke is rising from several buildings, and I can see figures moving around in what looks like organized chaos. Emergency vehicles, medical transports, the whole disaster response protocol. What the hell? Morrison mutters, his casual demeanor shifting instantly to combat alertness. That's not storm damage. He's right. The buildings are designed to handle weather like what we just survived. This is something else entirely. Attack, I suggest, though it seems unlikely. This is a training facility on a remote moon. What would be worth attacking here? Morrison pulls out his field communicator, one of the few pieces of equipment that survived our little adventure. The device crackles to life, broadcasting multiple emergency frequencies simultaneously. All units, this is base command. We have multiple casualties from structural collapse in Training Complex 7. Repeat, structural collapse with personnel trapped. All available rescue teams respond immediately. Structural collapse. During the storm, one of the training buildings must have failed catastrophically. And from the sound of things, people are still trapped inside. How far? Morrison asks, already moving toward the base at double time. Maybe 30 minutes at this pace. I reply, falling into step beside him. The other cadets follow without question, their exhaustion forgotten in the face of a new crisis. Too long, Morrison says grimly. People trapped in rubble don't have 30 minutes, especially not if there's still water getting in. Still water getting in, right? Because the storm that nearly killed us is still dumping water all over the training complex, and structural collapse usually means compromised drainage systems that we are looking at a drowning situation. Again, Morrison's pace picks up, and somehow we all manage to keep up with him despite our earlier ordeal. There's something about humans in crisis mode that makes everyone around them perform better than they normally could. Like their determination is literally infectious. 20 minutes later, we reach the outer perimeter of the base. The scene is exactly as chaotic as the radio traffic suggested. Training Complex 7, a large multi-story building designed to house combat simulations, has partially collapsed. The entire eastern wing has pancaked down onto itself, creating a maze of twisted metal and concrete that's already taking on water from the continuing storm. Emergency teams are everywhere, but they are not making much progress. The rubble is too unstable for heavy equipment, too dangerous for standard rescue techniques. They're basically standing around arguing about proper procedure while people die underneath tons of debris. Morrison takes one look at the situation and immediately starts issuing orders like he owns the place. You, with the scanner equipment, I need a read on how many people are down there and where they are. You, engineering team, I need to know which supports are load-bearing and which ones we can cut. And someone give me a full structural analysis of what's left standing. The rescue teams look at him like he's lost his mind, which, to be fair, he probably has. But they also start moving to comply with his orders, because apparently Morrison's brand of confident insanity is exactly what everyone needed to hear. Sir, one of the rescue coordinators says hesitantly, we are not authorized to begin extraction until the safety assessment is complete. Protocol requires, protocol can kiss my ass. Morrison interrupts cheerfully. How long for your safety assessment? Standard procedure calls for 12 to 18 hours of analysis before 12 hours. Morrison's voice goes flat and dangerous. You want to wait 12 hours while people drown in there? The coordinator, a nervous-looking Zentorian with too many arms, starts to explain about liability and proper procedures and risk assessment matrices. Morrison listens to about 30 seconds of this before walking away mid-sentence. New plan, he announces to nobody in particular. We're going in now. Going in now. Of course we are. Because proper safety procedures are apparently just another suggestion humans choose to ignore. Morrison, I say carefully, maybe we should listen to the experts here. They know about structural engineering and rescue protocols. Morrison looks at me with something that might be disappointment. Kid, those experts have been standing here for 2 hours talking about what they can't do. Meanwhile, there are people dying 50 feet away. Sometimes you have to choose between being safe and being useful. Being safe versus being useful. Leave it to a human to make it sound like a simple choice, but then we hear it. Voices. Faint, desperate voices calling for help from somewhere deep in the rubble. Real people, really trapped, really running out of time while the experts debate proper procedure. Morrison hears it too, and his expression hardens into something I have never seen before. Not anger exactly, more like absolute, implacable determination. That settles it, he says. Who's with me? The question hangs in the air for a moment. This is completely against regulations. It violates every safety protocol in the manual. It's dangerous, stupid, and likely to get us all killed. Naturally, every single cadet volunteers immediately, because apparently Morrison's stubborn refusal to accept defeat really is contagious. And right now, that might be exactly what those trapped people need.